Well, welcome to Breaking Through to Truth, where the ocean meets the sand and the tides clear out the debris. Coming to you from the 33rd parallel again, where many realities come together in one timeline on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So today, CHelsia and I have a guest today, and we would like to just experience a roundtable conversation, or however that may go. And how far down the rabbit hole do we go to think of choices that our life may give us? Our guest tonight is Free Spirit. He has 3 books, Love on the Shores of a Distant World, 2012, Meeting the Star Beings, and Keys to Immortality. And so we will be discussing various topics that he has throughout his books, and maybe one of these topics could be like the balance of all things, the balance of our life, our body, or maybe we balance our life in the spirit of all things, what makes us happy, or just different balance points we experience as we walk and journey through this life. So as we journey, we take our places to where we insert ourselves on the timeline, so all aspects of ourselves can learn from the minute all the way to the infinite big. So we're on the time scale of small and big, and then we may find out that those 2 points aren't really extremes. They're just a point where the beginning and the end meet. Sort of like 2012 was all seen to be like a cataclysmic process that maybe would collapse our society. Yes, we do see changes coming forth that are probably inevitable by the looks of everything together. However, there are choices to be made about different routes we may journey by the different decisions and choices or what we learn now. So, therefore, our guest, his name is Free Spirit, and I really just have him on the show because I want to find out more about him, and if we could see how maybe the energies in the unseen world moves realities, and how fuzzy places in between where consciousness has a difficulty, or shall I say a challenge or a distraction to actually learn what we came here to learn. And many people are learning on many different levels. So I just wanted to have our guest on. And basically, we're in the same boat when we want to release fear. We want to move through the drama of life. We want to stop being a victim in our lives to where we can use the tools in our toolbox that we've learned lifetimes and lifetimes ago to learn how to burst through these different membrane fields that are out there. And that's how I see it, as membrane fields. So hopefully I won't lose track. And to bring our guest on now, Free Spirit, are you there? Okay, so maybe he can't hear me. I'll try to go through another check with that during the commercial, unless we have a producer that can help me out. Well, we'll probably have to wait till commercial. Anyway, so what happens if we remembered the future? So the future could come back to the past to break through to another side of consciousness, awareness that perhaps now people are tapping into. The unseen world where, our energy moves realities. And we know that our thought has a very important aspect to it, because even on the minute level of where water does its vibrational fields to allow different insertions of other energies to break the barriers of that mold. Anyways, communication through water is how many dolphins and whales communicate. And right now I have water in my ear, which I think the vibration of the fields are distracting to me.
It's just a new experience, Dawnjah.
It is. So I know grids are recalibrating, and when people lose their hearing to a degree, it does reset the scale.
And do you know that it will change?
Yes, I often think that when we go through challenges, there's many realities under the one sun, and when we change something about ourselves, we do bring about a new pathway.
Well, the moment of consciousness now is time tripping all the time. Looking back, reflecting on the past, and we're thinking of new ways to create our future.
Yes, a friend of mine and I were actually talking about how we're reminiscing. Many people are reminiscing, and uh, and also moving forward, changes taking place to where we could look at our different aspects, our different choices. What do we want to do here? What's our ultimate?
I think we're rediscovering that momentarily. You know, we are reduced to the moment of now, if reduction is a decent word to use, and it is about what are our choices. And so we're constantly reevaluating all the time. And so, and just because of that, our choices change. And so, you know, we reserve that right to make those changes anytime we choose.
So if we think about how things change, how do we change? How do we enable this biocomputer that we have a soul inside getting these experiences? How do we allow that change to take place?
Well, you mentioned one very unique aspect of the human psyche, and that is our ability to remember the future. And, you know, being that we are biocomputers, we actually can create our future. We have the power to do so. And, you know, the power to do that remains in consciousness and your ability to be a creative force. You have to dynamically choose what your future is and live it in the moment.
Well, if you consider our life here, well, throughout the ages and the different epochs of time, these sections of time that give us a relative view of our linear historical process, but knowing that each time we learn something new, from the ruins to the dates and times of different ice core samples, to know that perhaps we are in a time that could be patterned out on paper.
It is all a cycle. But remember, that cycle is not necessarily a repetitive, perfect cycle that constantly repeats itself. What happens is we are spiraling into the same dynamic energies, but every time we spiral into it, there's often a small amount of change. And so it's just like saying, well, this time around, we have the choice to learn from our past to make a different choice to make our future different. You know, the future is not what it used to be. And that's been one of my quotes I've been using in song and in, you know, as often as I can, just to remind myself and anyone that I'm having a conversation with that it's really up to us to make a dynamic choice in choosing what our future is. Because if we allow somebody to be predictive and to prophesize what that future is because of the cycles out there, just remember, cycles are nothing more than giving us inherent energy by which we will mold and create with. And it's up to us to make the choice what the outcome will be.
Yeah, and if you see the patterns of time and of these events, perhaps we can also see when these cycles are going to give us some kinetic energy, some thrux. We have solar flares coming from the sun. Perhaps we can use that in a way that moves our consciousness through these barriers that are preventing us from seeing perhaps a way how we could teach those who are undeveloped light to wrap their emotional bodies or heads, brains around what a feeling body could bring.
Well, I think, you know, we look at, okay, cycle 24, solar maximus is going to peak this year. We could very well be hit with an X flare. We could absolutely have our telecommunication systems down. So what does that tell you? That's a predictive force there, but that doesn't mean that that's how it has to happen. Just remember, you know, our thoughts, our words, our actions are extremely powerful that can make changes in what a predictive outcome could happen. And for anything, we're going to learn from it. So I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as this is what's going to create change. It's going to make people make a decision one way or the other as to how they're going to deal with anything, whether it's cataclysmic or whether it's just a momentary loss of power. And we as a species are going to come together on all this. And then remember, wherever you are, whether you're in the cities or fortunate enough to be out in the open spaces there, you know, we're all going to be faced with the same type of event, and how we deal with it is purely up to being in the right place, right time, making the right choice.
So when you think of the chemical processes that choices enable, our brain changes through different processes of our ability to concentrate or focus on various parts of our brain. It's already been proven that through Dr. Lipton's work and others that chemical processes have a bearing to how our body either reacts or acts in certain situations.
Yes, the fight or flight syndrome will send the body's necessarily blood to the extremities so that we have the ability to run or fight. And then there's also, when we're in a protective mode, and we just necessarily will be making choices that hopefully will just keep us grounded to the point where we're not going to make a choice that we're going to regret.
Yes, and we can't live life also thinking that we will make a regrettable choice. So we have to go forward and know without fear that we are in charge of our destiny. No matter what type of group or people out there that say that we can't make our own choices. So outdated paradigms are going to be recycled, and we're going to have new paradigms. Perhaps when we stop using the old paradigm, the new places of discovery might appear. However, we haven't done that yet to a degree, but if so, then, it could be too quick. What do you think about rates and changes in consciousness and how people adapt and accept new ways of doing things?
Well, the one thing that the human psyche does do is look back upon its choices in the moment, and we always rethink, what could I have done, should I have done, or would I have done if I was given a second chance? So, being that that's who we are in consciousness, we just have to look ahead and say, what do you want for the future? And just aim for that, and never lose sight. It's all about focus in consciousness. Focus is the main target ingredient as to how you utilize your thoughts, your actions, your meditative moments when you're allowing just you and the connection to source to be the dominant force in your reality.
Yes, so if we as humans know we are our dominant force inside, but some people haven't incorporated all the aspects of themselves to make the forward movement so their dream of being here on the planet could actually manifest and make happen. So I was thinking about how DNA holds resonance values, and each cell in our body has a membrane, or some don't actually, but for the most part we have these membranes that have a gelling quality to them, and if we have more water in our body, the cellular structure will vibrate. And my thinking about it is that's how the earth is. The earth is 80% water, like our bodies are 80% water. And perhaps we communicate on a level where water is very sensitive. And Dr. Emoto has shown how sensitive this is. It's so subtle, I believe, that once you even start thinking about it, it could take a different route. So it's a matter of being. Water is just in a state of being, and forces act upon it. Well, we're figuring that out all the time with the tides and the water surges, and just different, and that just leads to different movements that the earth has, and why all these movements. And so without going down a rabbit hole, and that was part of my essay today about rabbit holes, it all comes down to resonance. If you want to, pull out of a situation, resonating fields of energy. The earth has a resonating field of energy, many, ionosphere, atmosphere, etc. And we have known throughout the last 20 years, or this generation that we've been here, that Kirkian photography can...
Kirlian?
Yes. How do you say it? Kirlian photography
can photograph your auric fields.
Right. And so what I was bringing it all to is how our bodies, our chakras, are these energy forces that put energy around our body. And in turn, I would think that whole concept of these energy fields hook in and is part of this earth organism that we're living in.
Well, think of it, this is our vehicle, like a car. And the operating system that you use is your ability through consciousness to make this vehicle mobile in any circumstance possible. And in doing so, you have a reactive sense of action creates reaction. So wherever you are placing yourself, whether it's in the field of meditation or in the field of dynamic social action out there, your chakra systems are going to be emanating chemically as well as vibrationally all that you are. And anyone that could read an auric field can be sensitive enough to see what dynamics are occurring around the body vehicle. And, you mentioned DNA. DNA is an important factor here for the memory complex of the physical body. The junk DNA is recording every action and thought process that teaches us to either be reactive or be responsive or, learn through consciousness how to upgrade the system all the time. And I believe that the water of this planet is the memory complex as well. And, we do things in looking at our past through dendrochronology, the tree rings, and the ice coring of the many glaciers that can take us back a couple 100,000 years to see what are the records of the planet. But in reality, we are the record. Through our genetic code handed down lifetime after lifetime through, father, mother to child, and repeating these forces and soul interacting with a physical body. We're stepping into a physical body and with a memory complex of the planet that's inherent to our species even being allowed to live here. It's an amazing process.
Yes, and we can see that this process is set up as a duality. It seems like we learn from polarity aspects that are around us, and basically we can tread through this balance by keeping everything that we see in balance.
How do we know what balance is?
Well, right, and that's what I was saying.
And the thing is, often, if you are on the edge, you make the choice that's going to bring a lot of change your way. I know for me that my life has been cyclic. Every 7 years or so, I make a choice that totally throws everything off balance so that I could learn from that. Like moving. Moving is a big deal, and then, or changing jobs is a big deal, or, making a major choice to dive deep into music or some kind of art, or something that's going to be a creative change in one's life. I mean, even the fact of, just let's say you were to take up yoga. That's a major change in your life. It's going to be a positive reinforcement for your choices down the road.
Yes, well, I was thinking, the body is our connection with our soul. And this soul is what is recording this information that we're learning here. We came to the earth to dive into the records, to watch YouTube, and to eat good food. And it seems like, and also we see the animals and the dogs and the cats and even elephants, and they bring this cuteness of life to us. So
well, I think an appreciation of the communication that we can have with the animal species here. I mean, they're so aware because they have a connection to, I would say, the dynamic force fields of the planet. They know when earthquakes are about to happen. They can read and feel the vibrations. They have a different sense of communication. At least the mammals of the ocean have a phenomenal sound sonar type of communication that goes on all the time. And you have like deep sea species that can only live under this great pressure and are constantly communicating all the time. And think in terms of bioluminescence that's happening out there, and we're just discovering new species all the time.
You mean like deep down in the water abyss? Yeah. The illuminated species?
Species that can be their own light source.
Well, it's interesting that comes from the depths, because when Japan had its terrible earthquake and tsunami starting March 11th, 2011, people have reported that they saw spheres of rainbow light coming out of the water there, right there where that crack. The Earth's grid has cracked open right in that area. So it's interesting that, movies like The Abyss, they show those glow-in-the-dark, transparent kind of rainbow beings, like saving them, basically, or having a consciousness. How would they make that up?
Well, just think in terms of, okay, whatever vehicle you choose to experience your life through, or even if you are empathing what it's like to be another species out there, you're going to adapt to your environment. And so if you, can only imagine what it's like to be a deep sea creature or a mermaid or, the great mammals that we know of, or an extraterrestrial type of inhabitants that can only live under the pressures of water. That's a new one out there, but, I believe that we do have that in our presence here within the dynamic Akashic record of this planet, that, there are all kinds of species from near and far that have both helped and aided us in our genetic growth, as well as made it their home.
So if we go back to the idea that everything on this planet is a vibration, and humans use vibration, and we give vibration, animals are synergistically connected in all that. The sun gives energy to the earth and creates photosynthesis so the plants can grow. Everyone knows that type of resonance fields. So these membranes have a vibration to them. So what I was getting at, too, that consciousness has, I think our guest was able to get on, so it's distracting. So consciousness has a vibration to it, too. Free Spirit, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. Yes, thank you, and it worked. Let me give a notice to the chat to see if they can hear. And can you hear? Okay, so we're still here, and we're talking about energies. Everything comes down to a vibration in life, and you could feel that vibration, and that's how cellular structures work in the human body. We were talking about, I was going to go forward, and maybe I can ask you this, what perhaps has your work led you into knowing about the energetic vibrations of our body chemistry through doing various energetic consciousness fields that you can basically cleanse to see the world in a broader perspective? Could you elaborate on that for us here? Thank you.
For me, I've found that I've discovered I'm a powerful vibrational being of light. And if we tune into this energetic body, we realize we're so much more than what we think we are. And it's this 3D reality, it's just a surface illusion. So it's time for people to go within and access those deeper realities of being. Okay, so if we go into the depth and perhaps we focus on ourselves because we know that that is a true reality. Our body temple is the vehicle that connects our soul and our spirit and everything we know to be real, even though we're walking in this paradigm of perhaps a world that we didn't really know we were going to partake in, but we have the opportunity to choose our reality right now of what we know to be true and put those movements forward to create the utopia we seek. So there's a balance we need to come up with. CHelsia and I were talking about, and your work talks about a balance. Could you bring some of your ideas into that about what we can do to fill our toolboxes up with information that may help us in the future to no matter what energy field we may come across? Well, at this time, balance is so important, and that comes about through physical and spiritual grounding. It's important to have an anchor in this plane whilst being open to the spiritual planes as well. And when those two polarities are held in balance, there's a perfect meeting point in the center of our being, and that's when we can step into our power and create what we want in this dimension.
Now, does our body energy have anything to do with what particular fields or what type of adjustment we have to go through to make an adjustment agreeable and harmonic to our life's experiences?
Well, the body's energy is very important, and the trouble is at this time is many people's bodies are poisoned by toxic diets and chemicals in inorganic foods, toxins in the water, and all of these pollutants are preventing people from holding a high physical energy in the body, and this is preventing people from coming into balance and becoming more integrated.
Well, this comes to mind about when I was younger and I was just traveling around. I went to a fruit farm and ate fruit for a month, and I had the idea of cleansing my body, my spirit, my soul, and things like that. And and I think that's why in the past different texts have taught us to go on a fast or cleanse. And I think it comes down to the different chemicals in the brain that we can reach another homeostasis point. Because through time, it seems like you don't realize you're eating bad things. You know, it catches up with you. Mm-hmm. And that tells me how strong the biocomputer really.
And cleansing's great. You know, I've been on a liquid diet now for the last 1 week, and I feel totally amazing. I can plug into all kinds of different frequencies that weren't there before, have more energy, I sleep less. It's like, wow, amazing.
More energy and sleep, yet less, yes. And you're open up to many fields of communication.
Yes. And your body doesn't need all this excess food. It's just a conditioning. We're conditioned to eat so much. And, you know, if you let go of that and step back a bit, you find you can nourish your body on a lot less.
Well, through my studies, was if you ate food, the energy that it takes to digest your food is breaking down. Your energy is being spent on digesting your food instead of letting it travel all the way up the spine into the brain and create a synaptic activity.
That's basically what's happening. Yeah, too much food is just keeping the energy too low in the body.
And another place we can probably cleanse the body is what we eat. Because sometimes we eat heavy things, you know, on the mucus side of white flour or pasty white rice, and it does clog up the system over time.
And dairy as well. Dairy is a big clogger as a system.
Well, yeah, also since dairy has been picking up the radiation through the grass, they had a report about the cows taking that and digesting it in, and its cesium is coming out into the milk. So coconut milk is a good alternative, and that's good for your joints, too. But I wanted to say to our audience that you do have 3 books out, and our guest today is a free spirit, and we had a little trouble getting on in the beginning, but he was able to join us, so that is who our guest is tonight. And he has 3 books, Love on the Shores of a Distant World, 2012 Meeting the Star Beings, and Keys to Immortality.
Why don't you give everyone your website as well, where they can reach you?
Yes, it's www.keystoimmortality.com, and people can find me there. And these 3 books, you know, they came through after I cleansed my body. They're packed full of information to help people navigate through the energetic shifts at this time. So well worth checking out. And these books can help you to cleanse, help you to understand, and help you to change your view of reality into a more positive one and transform your whole life. It's amazing. The journey I've been on over the last few years has been from transforming all of my fears and coming into this very powerful place of being and understanding.
Wow, so your experience has enabled people to see another path when they feel like they get stuck. So
definitely, it's all about letting go of the fear, letting go of the limitations, and really at this time it's about stepping into your power. You know, people are playing into disempowerment and control dramas, and it's time to say no to that and step into one's own personal power.
Yes, yes, I believe that too. That it's these distractions of the drama, and the victim consciousness is another one that's holding on to us. I think we come here to clear the karma each time we come, so perhaps we can dictate where our ride takes us.
Basically, the less karma you have, then the more power you have over your own experience, and you can actually overcome karma. In my experience, when you overcome all of your karma, wow, you know, you have 10, 20 times more options open to you, because you don't have that karmic programming that you have to suffer, and instead your life is totally different.
So when you overcome karma, do you think part of the process is about loving oneself and forgiving oneself and clearing the human psyche of that emotional baggage that weighs us down?
So it's a big part of the process. You know, the self-love and self-forgiveness is the most powerful thing you can do. But you can only do it for yourself, and other people, it's for them to find it for themselves. And you know, when you love and accept yourself on a deep level, you become something different, something remarkable, and people plug into that, and then they're inspired to heal themselves. So I don't think it's possible to clear the collective issue, but you can clear it in yourself and be the change that you want to see.
Absolutely, I fully.
Because each human being, you know, has free will, so it's not our job to fix other people and awaken them. It's for them to choose.
But also, you could walk into a room with this love vibe around you, and you can affect everybody in that room.
You can do, and the people vibrationally receptive to that will be using their free will to plug into that and awaken. Because really they're doing it for themselves. They're just receiving the trigger. The love vibe is the trigger, and it's, oh yes, that's great, I'm going to open up, and so they do.
Well, in a Native American perspective, you know, that type of love vibe that you emanate is a giveaway. And when you give away that energy freely, other people are able to use and tap into that like nutrition. So in the spiritual sense, that is loading the grid with love.
With love and positive energy, yeah. And loading our personal grids as well, because we have this big collective planetary grid. We also have our own personal grid that we can charge up with more love as well.
And yeah, many people probably have a personal grid like the Earth, having fun in lakes and streams and recharging and rebalancing with that type of energy nature. You know, we know that that's a real aspect of where our bodies come from, is from nature. So we have the same resonance, the same quality of vibration, if you want to put it that way.
I think it's like recharging, and you know, everybody needs to get back to basics to recharge occasionally. You know, just mostly get out of social consciousness, which is kind of like a clogged highway during rush hour. You need to clear that out and just go back to what is just natural and normal.
And for many people at this time, they'll find it's time to leave the cities and go and live in a higher vibrational location. Like I live on a tropical island, unplugged from all that continental city energy.
Right. Well, you know, you inspire me, Free Spirit. And the fact that you're on a liquid diet now, I felt that before. I felt that where you just turn around and you can hear somebody talking to you and they're ways away, you know. And so it's an inspiration to basically how do you feel right now?
Totally amazing. Like the first few days, it was a challenge to get used to it, but now I feel I'm just plugged into source, and the veils are so much thinner, and like my body's just surging with all this fresh energy, like the light body is really activated. My dreams are powerful and my work's expanding. So I'm just on a big edge of transformation, and it's the liquid diet that's facilitating all of this shifting.
Do you intend to stay on this liquid diet long?
The plan is to do this for like 3 months or something, and perhaps even stay on it for good, because the last 2 years I've found food is just toxic. Solid food is just keeping my body here when I'm wanting to transmute the body and ascend. And every time I eat dense food, I just get caught up in denser vibrations, my energy drops. Even if I eat fruit and bread and, seeds, higher vibrational food, it's still doing the same thing. So now it's just smoothies, it's just juices, and wow.
So do you find yourself more sensitive to the energies around you, or the fact that you're on an island right now, you're feeling the buzz of the trees and the birds and the beautiful colors? Or
the island is like a major sanctuary because there's no continental energy here. Because these volcanic islands, the rock is very fresh. It's just been created the last few thousand years. And the continents are like 500,000 years old. Like the rock is very stale and it's old energy. So this island gives me like a springboard where I can reach higher planes. And the seas there is warm every day. The plants are lush, the food's organic. It's just, it's amazing here. That gives me that added boost, and I need that now at this point on the path.
Well, that's a wonderful way to continue your own personal evolution. But I have one curious question, and that is, if you are becoming a liquidarian, do you have a future that would make you become a breatharian? Because
I feel that may be a possibility. It's an experiment. I'm just going to see how far I can go with this.
It is about, we do replace our cellular structure much more often than 7 years. Some things take longer than others. The liver is constantly regrowing new cells and regenerating, and we have the ability to replace our entire body. And if my thoughts are, if you were to stay on your liquid diet and constantly be eating, high energy consumption now, that eventually you could just live on the air.
I could live on the air, and also I'd probably be able to teleport across into different dimensions and perhaps even ascend out of this frequency altogether. Well,
it is part of the training, the spiritual training that many teachers out there, at least on the high end of the avatarism, if you would call it that, about the great siddhis and, accomplishing that within the human body physical, to take oneself into bilocation, to lay the body down where the body avatar can be any place, any time.
In your book, Free Spirit, 2012, Meeting the Star Beings, do you address the cycle that Earth is in, and how this cycle that we're living right now, and how perhaps these new energy resonance fields are adding to or taking away, spinning into our consciousness field, and how we go through to adapt to these changes?
Yes, I write about all of that, and the main thing that's happening at this time, something to help people understand, is there's two different dimensional frequencies converging. So this is why this time is called the convergence. There's the 3D world that's continuing to run, and there's a new 5D world that's come in alongside. Now human beings have the chance to cross over and jump dimension. And this Stargate, this opportunity, it's going to be there for a few years, but after that, those two realities are going to diverge again. So, this is a powerful time in the now to make this dimensional shift, this jump.
When you mention Stargate, do you have a particular focus towards one particular star system that could be dimensionally open because of various galactic alignments at present?
For me, I've found my own body is the Stargate. You know, I've had the experiences many times of astral traveling. I've been to Sirius, I've been to Arcturus and all these other star systems. And, you know, there's Stargates all over the universe that one can plug into. But the main Stargate is within our own body because, you know, we are a multi-dimensional beings spread across the whole universe. And when people look inside, they can find the portal within. You know, I can go into meditation, access all kinds of star systems. You know, it's just there.
Do you feel that when you're connecting to various star systems that somewhere they may have contributed towards your physical vehicle at one point? Or what is the soul family connection to these particular star families out there?
I feel the connection is past lives in higher dimensional worlds, and you know, I feel I've come here at this time to bring some higher frequencies to this planet. I believe that in a past life I was an immortal in a big race of star beings, and you know, they sent me here to bring those frequencies here to help the Earth with the ascension process.
That's exactly how I see it, Free Spirit. And myself here in this 3D world is trying to gather the formulas and explanations and different modalities of thought to prove it to another aspect of me. So it's interesting you say that, and I do feel like our oversoul selves are, and we can experience that type of energy from another aspect of somebody walking on this planet at this time. And to gather soul groups and oversoul selves to reach a new plateau of what human consciousness could become. And, you know, just remembering, being able to remember our lessons and things that we have experienced in, like, your past lives that you were talking about. And to be able to bring them forth in 3 books is a very, commendable way to put it down for everyone to comprehend through reading. And
there may even be more books. There's possibly going to be a 4th book later in the year.
Wow, okay, we'll be looking forward to that. And your website again is?
www.keystoimmortality.com.
And I
there's
saw
all my books on there.
Yes, and I saw the link to your books, which is great. And so do you feel like perhaps consciousness, well, you said that you felt there was 2 dimensions that were merging here. Could, depending on an aspect of somebody's vision and where are they looking at this whole entire game that's going on here, could there be more than just 2 realities merging together? Could there be like a whole spectra of harmonic ones or disharmonic? You know,
I feel there's an infinite amount of realities and different possibilities, and the more we expand our being, the more we can perceive. I believe there's several fixed frequencies like the 3D and the 5D, but there's beyond that. You know, you can go beyond the 5th dimension, you can go to the central galactic sun, you can go beyond that, and you can go all the way back to source. And, you know, the source, the I am presence, is beyond all dimensions.
So, well, if you can enable your spirit and are these stargates in the sun? Well, you said that you go within. So how?
Well, the first stargate is within our own sun. You know, if you can access the stargate within the Earth's sun, you can go into 5th dimensional hyperspace. And once you're in there, you're basically in the astral worlds. And, you know, if you cleanse on a very deep level, you can remember what you're doing then, you can go much deeper, and you can start going through portals in other stars outside of this solar system. That's when you start to contact star beings, intergalactic beings. And then much later you can go through the central galactic sun, you know, the sun at the centre of our Milky Way. There's a big journey that people can take with their spirit bodies. And the further you can go and bring back here, then the more integrated you can become in the now.
Well, within the Native American cultural, I would say one thing that we do every year is sun dancing, and primarily through the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota tribes, and connecting through sensory deprivation, lack of water, lack of sleep, all of that. It opens up the human consciousness to the sun, and through the sun, one receives these, if you want to call them whale codes, or they receive a creation code that allows them to connect to their source. And the source is many things to many people, but it is also connecting to their stargates of ancestor, where they came from, and making that journey back home.
The sensory deprivation I find is a very useful and powerful tool at plugging inside this source energy.
Absolutely.
Me too.
I remember sitting in a cave for 3 days and nights in the total darkness, and it was amazing at the end of it.
Yeah, I've found that sensory deprivation chambers are all over sacred sites all over the world, primarily for that reason, just to strip down what the other senses are reading and filtering through our human psyche all the time, and just be in a state that you've never been in before, wiping the slate clean, connecting to source in such a way that only the vibration of the planet can feed you.
Well, so we become more sensitive, and how are we able to keep the energies away that we don't really want near our body? What kind of fields can we set up around our human auric chambers of chakra fields? How do we protect that energy so only the highest vibration can connect out there to the source of all things? And how can we shed the heaviness from our fields so we can maintain that awareness in the source of all things?
I find that for many people, it's about letting go of attachments to harmful ways of living, ditching the TV and ditching the nights out at the pub and eating meat, and all kinds of lower energies kind of attack our fields and keep us in a lower vibration. So people need to take care of themselves at this time, nurture their bodies and nurture their spirits, and make sure that the surroundings are very conducive for this deep spiritual work. And just being mindful of what they're exposing themselves to, and taking responsibility for their energetic being.
Well, yes, and willpower comes in with that free spirit. I know that when I start eating dandelion greens, now see, I'm a different part of the sector as you are right now, because I am eating heavier at the moment, but I have experienced where I had this lightness of being. And when you start craving the dandelion juice and just having a green drink for the day, I start finding myself craving the dandelions. And I need more of it, and there's no fast food restaurant to get from. But now I'm in a state where I can be distracted, and I can go ahead but I'm changing, by a little bit. But I would take a little sparkling bubbly soda or something, not, a naturally made one, but nothing with caramel or Coke or anything like that, but just the sugar, So the willpower is what I need to, do better choices for.
The willpower and the empowerment, yes.
But when you start seeing results and feeling that blissful state, then you keep going for it because you could feel it. And you can see that your whole perception on life has changed. You have more patience for people, and you just think everything is more beautiful than perhaps what another person may be seeing. But there are fine lines and subtleties. Speaking of which, we're coming up to a break soon, and I believe it might be happening perhaps maybe 5 minutes, but sometimes it goes on the 3-minute mark on this hour. So I just wanted to notify you of that if we
hear the music.
Hear the music, okay?
Okay.
So in our past life multidimensional worlds that do you feel like right now is a time where the energies are such that we could perhaps tap into another field that is running concurrent with this one? Or do you feel like the veils in this whole area of where the earth may be is becoming thinner and we could tap into it?
I feel that the earth is moving into a higher dimensional region of space, which means all human beings receptive to a higher vibration will automatically be able to see in a different way. This is part of the 26,000 year ascension cycle, and I think some human beings are going to start having the experience of, meeting multi-dimensional star beings. Perhaps that's something we can talk about in the next part of the show, these star beings.
Absolutely.
It's funny to say which comes first, the chicken or the egg. I look at the possibilities out there, which are unlimited. And I also see the fact that there are people out there like yourself that are breaching what I call the bleed-throughs of dimensional experience. And in doing so, you're laying down a record for those that are probably maybe in their kindergarten or infant stage trying to do that very same thing. And the more people open up that type of dimensional grid work, more people are allowed to experience it. It's almost like species oriented, though. We are in this body physical. It has a certain parameter by which our experience through our ascension allows it to be. And when we keep breaking the ring past knot of our multi-dimensional persona within a physical vehicle, the more we realize that we are so much more. But it seemingly is a step at a time. And as the yogis used to say, that they keep coming back to reincarnate until every blade of grass has ascended.
Do you feel like that's why you've come to the planet at this time? We're back to a new balance point. This is Breaking Through to Truth with Dawnjah and CHelsia. Every Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. We would like to take this time to offer, if you have $5 or $10 or $20 in your bank account, that you can donate to the station at freedomslips.com/support. So we could stay on the air and bring you new points of view, new experiences to put in your toolbox, so you could probably be prepared for the changing future that all of us are inevitably going to experience in one way, shape, or form. And we have a guest today, Free Spirit is here, and he has 3 books that will put it all down in a book. It's very good to read a book because you can sit back on the couch and get into the whole reality of what you're reading. And since it is a very subtle subject, if you're new into help changing consciousness, that is probably the 21st century's newest modality of learning. But his 3 books are called Love on the Shores of a Distant World, 2012 Meeting the Star Beings, and Keys to Immortality. And you can find those books at keystoimmortality.com, and there'll be a link to his books. So, Free Spirit, before we went to the little break that we had, we were talking about our roles as humanity in this whole experience of reaching new plateaus of experience and creation. If we compare to what we learn about the first humans, if they were hunter-gatherers and people of this sort of culture. Well, we are bridging many cultures together here in the world at this moment. And basically, when you were saying that your role here is to help the ascension of the earth, and I would think that includes, and you didn't get time to perhaps elaborate on it because we went to the break, but the adjustment of consciousness. I consider like an adjustment's going to be made because rise and falls of civilizations happen and consciousness shifts do too. It feels like there are, can you elaborate on this and the role consciousness has, as well as the change in what we believe and how this point right now is different than any other?
Well, I'd say the role of consciousness is to evolve the human being, to evolve our spiritual journey, and to evolve the collective as well, and to transform the vibration of the human race. And, consciousness at this time is so important because of this alignment with the central galactic sun and the end of this 26,000 year cycle. This is a pivotal point in human history. Humanity can go two ways now. Humanity can either choose to destroy itself or to evolve and become so much better.
That brings to my mind about how we as humanity can be seen as cathode ray tubes, and how our light, our energy bodies, do plug into this earth. It plugs in and is synergistically related to her as we breathe, as we eat. We eat all kinds of materials and we're able to digest. And just if you do get in a lighter way of vibrating these cells and allow these cells to go to different places in our body, it seems like we can adjust our body chemistry so the vibration can be attuned to what an organism just living on the planet without any worries or fears, or, we can reach new plateaus all the time with readjusting our homeostasis level of communication with our cells and the vibrating aspects of how all those cells communicate. When you were saying we can only work on ourselves and that's all we're responsible for, yes, I see that too. And as you were talking about energy, and, they've done those scientific experiments where they click or hammer a little tuning fork and it vibrates, and then they can walk into a theater where everybody in the audience of the theater is holding these tuning forks, and that one tuning fork that was vibrating that just came into the room set off all of those other tuning forks to vibrate. I view it as humanity and what you're doing and sending your information out there so we can learn a new way, a new path that some of us have experienced or that some of us want to go deeper into. But everything is a resonance field if we look at it like that. I personally think like love and the unconditional vibration of accepting all things and allowing, that does have a bearing on our energy environment. That's why some cities are really cool to live in and other cities aren't.
Yeah, allowing is like a big thing. If you don't allow yourself to love and to receive love, and this causes big contractions in the energy field. For me, I found that learning how to love and receive love was just profoundly transformational in all areas of my life.
Yes, so basically, as we journey through this life, we gain experiences, and these experiences perhaps will change our belief structure to what we incorporate as our whole belief, or which becomes our journey, because you'll make decisions where you want to go depending on what you value as your belief, I would say. There is a turning point in that too, because society may not do it that way. They might, because we have to value money. Some have to value money so much that, they're deep into it. And others have another level of using humanistic services or compassion as being their barometer of what they balance their life in. But what I'm saying is, like, the more we know, the more we can get distracted by it or really pull back to what is real. And how do you when you meditate, do you clear fields within you? Do you consciously do that to clear fields, or your way of life is basically?
My way of life is the meditation, I find. I used to actually sit down and do a lot of formal meditation as such, but now I don't actively meditate because my whole life is the meditation. This is something to work toward when your whole life is just an expression of your own being. You're like in the zone, you're in the peace, you're in the stillness, and there's no need to meditate because you're there already.
Okay, so would you say that the various chakras in our body connect to fields that are outside of us, and it could be
The chakras are plugged into all kinds of universal fields, and people's frequencies, people's vibrations will determine what fields they're plugged into. And if your vibration changes, you plug out of some fields and plug into higher ones.
So you could start with cleansing the body field. Like you would have to make a change between your body, your spirit, or your mind, like your belief structure, right? To, like you're doing a fast right now on juice.
Yeah.
So you're raising your body vibration. Does that help your mind and the clarity of mind? I remember my eyes were able.
The raising of the body vibration, what that does is it takes the energy from lower chakras into the heart chakra, and then what that does is negative emotions, fears, emotional dramas, karma, it pushes all that up to the surface so you can cleanse the emotions. So physical cleansing forces the emotional cleansing, and the emotional cleansing forces the spiritual cleansing. So it's like a sequential process.
Oh, well, that makes sense. CHelsia and I were just saying before you came on about emotional clearings. And so I would think that you would have to, and how we were saying, you would have to keep telling yourself, and this too shall pass, right? So if you think of like the cellular structure of our DNA holding stagnancies, you know, in the modern day person, perhaps they don't get enough exercise, that cell is not spinning. But if you start eating a lighter diet, it becomes more mucus free, cells are able to spin and move, and you know, overall, I think growths happen when there is stagnancy. So if we do cleanse, the body temple is a great place to start. I think that's why they had, well, in different texts, people fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. Have you did a fast that long before?
I haven't done a fast that long before, but I've spent 2 years on the raw foods diet, and basically what the raw food diet does is it alkalizes the body, it changes the body chemistry, and what this does is it's purging the body of toxins and it's keeping the body temple in a high and clean vibration.
Right. Well, we have acids and bases, and that could be seen as another ring past knot, if we want to say it that way. The acids do allow, is what I hear, cancers to grow. Also, joint pain is related to stagnancies of acids that build up between, you know, the bone, like the patella, the knee joint, the ankles, the fingers, and different jointed areas.
And the thickness of the blood is a big issue as well. You know, if the blood gets too thick, the whole system becomes stagnant and slows down. So I find for me, I have to keep the blood thin and pumping well.
Yes, I have noticed that in myself. And I think, you know, if people have PMS symptoms, you know, where they're just agitated, it's really good to go on a cleanse before that cycle takes place. I believe that hormones are infiltrating the system, and it can't break them down or allow it to flow when there's stagnancies and blockages that have stopped the flow process. And emotions are related to the flow of that.
Well, Dawnjah.
Definitely. And most of the excess hormones are coming from cow's milk, and they're animal hormones that get into the human body, and there's a lot of incompatibilities, and this causes these imbalances and emotional disturbances.
But also, you know, our bodies are tuned to the circadian rhythms, whether, you know, the female cycle, you know, is based by the moon and also by the cycle of Venus. And when we are in tune with the cycles and are not off kilter or slightly out of balance with it, we find that the body smoothly operates in a different way.
Yeah, well, you can see it on the beaches. That's why I say in the intro that the tides clear away the debris every 28 days, and also the new moon and full moon cycles. You'll see the seaweed up on the beach, and so and she's cleansing herself, and that seaweed is stacked up there, just like the female human cleanses herself once a month, every 28 days. it's interesting how we are synergistically
connected with the
Earth. Yes, and it's beautiful to know that, wow, this whole organism is moving through space and is okay. I'm sure we'll be okay.
Yeah, and we were talking about alkalinity versus acidic, and the perfect balance is very similar to the Schumann frequency as well. The same number system is seemingly vibrationally at play here.
Oh, that's interesting to know. Like the Schumann resonance goes up to 10. Well, we were vibrating in a 7.0 back in 1998 or 1991.
Well, the balance point is about 7.8.
87.
And that could go up and down depending upon the vibration of, I would say, interstellar incomings or, solar radiation and what permeates our magnetic fields here. But, it also is that balance between life. The carbon-based life systems here have to have a balance of the pH, the potential hydrogen in the system that allows for it to maintain an alkaline state.
So when you're... do you find, Free Spirit, that if you're at the beach, you can feel more oxygen for, like, these hydrogen states? Do you feel like that helps all of us?
I feel there's more oxygen on the beach because when the waves are crashing, it's a different type of oxygen. I think it's called ozone, which is like O3 instead of O2. For me, I'm always going down to the sea because I feel it's very powerful for cleansing the body, keeping the aura clean. I'm fortunate here. I can just go like 2 or 3 k's down the road and there's some volcanic sea pools where I can jump in and swim and the water's warm all year round. So it's great.
Well, that's what I do too. And I find that it does clean the aura, especially if it's a little bit cold but doable, I love that. And if it's hot outside and you get the balance of the sun, and to swim in these channels is great. And then you come out and my body feels like it's better balanced because it's cooled off. It's not as hot. And I think... And
it cleanses away all those negative astral attachments that may have got accumulated during the last few days or so.
Yes.
Yeah, and the one wonderful thing about the tides, not only is it based upon the circadian rhythms of the moon and the sun in a perfect geometry that allows for it to take place, also, like you said, the ozone becomes emitted by the restructuring of the power of the tides. When those waves come crashing, it's restructuring the water, and it's also, cleansing not only the shores, but cleansing the structure of the water itself to be able to emanate through a geometrical process of the atomic structure, emanate that extra oxygen molecule into the air. And so you can sense and feel the healing potential there. And, I was at the ocean today, observing, as I love to do, at least once or twice a week, in the summer, of course, more, that this is a constant revolutionary cycle that's occurring daily within ourselves as well. We wake, we rise to the circadian rhythms of the sun, and we get dosed up with the vitamin D, the liquid sunshine, into our bloodstreams. And then the daily ongoing chemical process occurs for us to make an exchange of energy. Sometimes the intake of chlorophyll of the plants regenerates our blood in such a way, and that chemical process and geometry is almost identical between chlorophyll and hemoglobin. And so
the chlorophyll is great because it's just pushing all the toxins out of the blood.
Yeah, indeed. And so, we're so connected to the creational forces here on our planet.
Well, yeah, well, I was looking at that whole rhythm, the circadian rhythms you're talking about. Well, could the rhythm of our breath, we're in and out. Look at the tides. The tides is the water, and it's an energy that's acting upon it and making it go in and out. It's interesting to note the pulse that the earth has, with the various animals. And I was wondering, I often think all humanity has a heart that beats with the earth. Well, we have some energy that makes all of our hearts beat. And so we look at that as being, and how our timeline is. And animals, for example, I was wondering if you could say anything to this, Free Spirit.
Yeah.
that animals' hearts are perpendicular or parallel to the ground, and our hearts are standing perpendicular to the ground. I was wondering if that tip has anything to do with our life cycle, considering that the human heart is tilted at 23.5 degrees in relation to the spine, and that is the exact tilt of the axis that the Earth is having at 23.5 degrees.
Wow, I didn't realize that before, but it sounds like there's some magical alignment there. So it's assisting the human body assimilate the energies of the universe with that, shared alignment.
And knowing that perhaps we will have, or in the future, they've said through ice samples and such, but we can only be prepared if there is a tilt of the axis. Well, if that happens, then perhaps our rotation could be altered. Well, if that happens, I would think that our DNA could change and we can probably accept more chromosomes because that will dictate our height. And maybe that has something to do with the dinosaurs and why reptiles were so big during one era of our time here on Earth. And now they're very small, and there are connection points of a bird, right, CHelsia?
Well, our human brain, when we go through gestation from the time that our original one-celled bodies become two and multiply at such a speed, we go through the whole evolutionary process within gestation where we go through amphibious, reptilian, mammalian, and even touch upon the angelic brain.
Well, I believe that's where humanity is going. The next step in evolution is to become a flying angelic being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once human beings evolve, they're going to get light, they're going to develop wings, they're going to be able to teleport, levitate, fly, and all of these things.
Well, I was in a sweat lodge one time, and the butterfly came and told me to travel between the worlds, you become liquid light. And I have been researching that topic for about 20 years, just in and out of how this whole picture of our metamorphosis stage can be related to watching the cycles of a butterfly and different other cycles of animals, and how animals gear themselves toward magnetic frequencies to find their pathway, and how consciousness is related to shifts in our polarity of where this torsion field energy that's around the Earth can be affected, and vice versa by our human energy, like the dipoles in our brain. So, like when civilizations fall, consciousness has a tendency to get wired up because there's intense energy at the change of the regard, so to speak, which could be change in polarity, but by how much or how smooth that transition is, it may be. Do you think that has something to do with humans and our consciousness and how we have energy flow through us and what we think of when that happens?
I feel the shift is all about, how smooth the shift is dependent on how many human beings awaken and assimilate the new energies. And it's all about personal choice and free will, and some humans are going to choose to be a part of this new paradigm and others won't. There's just two different paths there for each person to choose the path that they want to follow. And the more people choose the upward path, then the smoother it's going to be for the human collective as a whole.
Wow, so I could see how varying points of view could emerge. And maybe, there's polarity issues in our modern day world. People are experiencing, from everything bad and good and right and wrong and, extreme points of consciousness. But that could be all just triggers, so we could learn which direction we really want to take this.
I think that, unfortunately, powers that be out there have had a hand in the shutting down of consciousness by various different programming out there. And, we have made choices to remain asleep as a species. And so the responsibility that those that are awakened is to be that change, like we always say, that you want to see, and emanate that change. And the more that that frequency is picked up by those that are sitting on the fence of their own ascension process, the more that we can break the holding pattern that consciousness has with the belief systems that are holding mankind in the old paradigm and make a new one.
Exactly. You summed it up pretty well there.
Yeah, so do you feel like well, it's frequency. It comes down to that. What are we going to tap into? Are we going to allow our consciousness to be dictated by every thought and move that we want to think about by a television, for example, or different courses of action one can take regarding that? Also, maybe an idea is to start tapping out of that reality. Or it's dependent on everyone, isn't it? Or do you think we can reach 100th monkey theory by quantity of or quality of energy rather than a quantity?
I think it's all about coming out of the victim mode and becoming creators. And the more creators that there are, then that creates a more powerful resonance that will inspire others to follow suit. Maybe 100% will awake, I'm not sure, but I think a high number will certainly do it.
Wow.
And we can very well see a splitting off of the paradigm where human consciousness can divide the dimensional grids here, and we can see two different worlds.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I see that actually happening, and that's something I talk about in the books a lot, this separation of consciousness, because some human beings are consciously going upwards and some human beings are consciously going down through their choices, and there's like a massive vibratory tug of war going on, and because of free will every human being has to have the experience that they choose, so that road has to be cut at some point. Those that want to go up, and those that want to go down, and in that cutting of the road there's the separation of the worlds. So I see there's going to be some collapses within society, and at the same time there's going to be some ascensions for those that have chosen that path.
Well, that's interesting, because when we think of our human experience here, we're given limited choices through the television, as you were saying about turning off your television. Well, we have more choices, like the conversation we're having right now. This is a choice on how we can use this consciousness field of our energetic bodies to basically elevate to a new place, which would resonate an environment and create a pathway that we could follow, and soon enough we'll probably all meet up with each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
The trouble is, a lot of people, instead of using their consciousness for awakening, they're giving it away to, fear-based energies, and this is giving the powers that be all kinds of energies. People give their power away, and then they get manipulated, they get poisoned, they get tricked. They get caught up in.
Yes, the chemistry in their body changes. When you have fear, we learn from Dr. Lipton that our energy goes to a flight or fight mode, and we have cortisol released in our body, which adds the whole chemical process, and we end up, having blood in our extremities instead of our viscera where we grow. So all of these, we have to cleanse our energetic environment, and for me, also, it's water. I could go to hot springs, if you do hot springs, and I feel like your aura's clean from hot springs, too.
I used to go to the hot springs when I lived in California for a few months.
Oh.
There's some amazing hot springs in Harbin Springs, just north of San Francisco. It's amazing.
Yes, Harbin. Yes, I have never been there, but I have friends that went there. But I would go up to Mammoth and get those hot springs that are on the mountainsides. You could drive to each one of them. And so far, last time I was there, you didn't pay for them. They were just natural spots that people went to. Well, we're making our lives better every Sunday. This is the Sunday, the new day of each week. It's the Sun's Day. Many people who fast often think of that when Sunday comes rolling around. Well, I do, and I did back then. But we're here ready to shed all the old paradigms that don't serve us anymore. And as you know, this is Breaking Through to Truth with Dawnjah and CHelsia, and our guest tonight is Free Spirit. He has 3 books out about how to make your life better. And if you're in a stump or you don't know which direction to turn, get one of these books. Love on the Shores of a Distant World, or Keys to Immortality is a good one. Many tools that you can fill up your toolbox with to adjust to the changes that perhaps we may be going through as consciousness beings in the future.
Again, why don't you plug your website, Free Spirit?
Yes, it's www.keystoimmortality.com, and also there's my YouTube channel as well. There's 50 free videos that I made during 2012 talking about all the different aspects of this vibrational healing. So people can find my YouTube channel by going to my website and then just clicking on one of the videos, and then they can subscribe to my YouTube channel. So there's tons of resources out there for people to watch, to use, to help them with this journey.
That's great, because a lot of people prefer YouTube so that they can just allow it to roll while they can multitask.
Yeah.
I have a favor to ask of you, because The Keys to Immortality is a wonderful title. Could you elaborate on what those keys are for our listening audience out there, so they can have a clue as to truly what your information is all about and what you are contributing to the planet right now for our species ascension?
Yes, the main keys to immortality is the releasing of these lower energetic blockages. And, you know, when you release these blockages in your being, your DNA changes. And the DNA at this time in humanity is programmed to be mortal, you know, degenerates, but that can be changed. You know, you have dormant DNA, dormant chromosomes, dormant double helix strands, and these can be awakened and a new dimensional body can be activated. Then you have keys in the dream time, you know, opening the dream portals. When you open those gateways, you can align to an immortal way of being. Then you have the chakras, opening up the pineal gland. This is another key, you know, making sure the pineal gland is cleansed and your body's not poisoned. And then there's looking at the causes of death, you know, looking at the karmas, looking at the fears. And when you heal the karma, it's possible to transcend the need to actually die as such.
So what dies when you transform the karma?
Basically, when you transform the karma, you no longer have to be here in a physical body. And once all your karma's gone, then you don't need to have a death experience, because karma makes you suffer and death is about suffering. There's no easy death, really. So if you clear all of your karma whilst you're alive in a body and in a good state of health, you can then begin the transmutation process and ascend.
Well, I see. So everything is on an energetic level. And when your mind behaves, you know, it's our mind that has to be tamed, isn't it? We get into the doubt and fear, and that would change our body chemistry. Then we're in acidic mode and we start growing things we don't perhaps want. Or, you know, and it's hard to change that just, you know, with thinking alone.
It's also about working with the ego, you know, the mind, the ego is basically running the show for many people, and this ego is keeping us in prison, keeping us trapped in limited belief systems, and yes, that's influencing the body chemistry, the body vibration and everything. And when you can transcend the ego and work with that, you can break through into a different place of being.
It's been termed that this particular ego is really called the false ego, that's connected to our belief systems and our perspective point of view that's limited when we don't open ourselves up to the multidimensional being that we truly are.
So that,
yeah, exactly. The false ego, it's so inflated because it's where everyone's putting their energy onto. They believe they're who they think they are, and this, just inflates the ego like a bubble and then pushes all other realities out of the picture.
Yes,
and then one comes out of balance.
Right, and the balance is all thrown off because we're inundated by programmings through our various activities during our life experience, and some don't even realize that they can gather a whole nother reality. I think, it's interesting that I don't hear people going camping very often anymore, but, they go snowboarding and skiing and such, but the whole energy of the planet can change with consciousness changing. If we become more of a world that lives in buildings and doesn't relate to even the food that we're eating, our consciousness has an adaptability clause written in it, and we can probably adapt to another vibration that perhaps isn't the best way for us to be.
Exactly.
So when you think of like the membrane and the cell and how, it goes back to sacred geometry for me, and also how the cell vibrates. And the cell vibrates. All growth occurs from a resonance. Like, okay, there's a resonance outside of our Milky Way galaxy that's coming into our solar system, and this resonates all the fields that are involved in this whole growth process. So when a field resonates with a vibration, that resonance needs to occur so penetration of that field can take place easier. For example, I used this before about 12 around 1, that whole ratio of development, and how Christ and the 12 disciples could be an algorithm for that sort of energy that's needed, so one can get in to start a paradigm or to create a sparking of a new paradigm. In sacred geometry, CHelsia here is a scholar of sacred geometry. Do you use sacred geometry in like the Merkaba field work you do and such?
For me, I actually build Merkabas. If people look at my website, there's 20 different types of structures, and I create these multi-dimensional portals, and these have been powerful awakening tools for me. I use the different platonic solids and the compounds of the tetrahedras, and this is like creating gateways in consciousness, continuing to work with these structures. As I do so, it helps me to understand the universe.
Yes, and do you find that the more aware you are of, I would say, God geometrizes? And so everything could be broken down to a language of perhaps a mathematical equation, if there is to be a language that's universal among species out there, because creation seemingly has its connection to a procedure by which its intelligence is built upon the former and connects to what it can creationally become after that in a mathematical way.
I've found that geometry and mathematics are the common languages because they're universal to the whole universe, and other species can use that to communicate with humanity.
And what is chemistry but building blocks of molecules? Then that is geometry in its own right as well. And through the formula, one can cross-pollinate, so to speak, all these all these modes of information, like going from hertz to nano, to light particles, to spectras of light, to octaves, to families on the periodic table all relate as well. And the same way as how our DNA codes with the vibrations that are in an environment. It goes to the same, the code of operation that the valence rings on the periodic table use as like p orbitals building on each other. The logarithmic functions we see in society, they do give us examples of growth curves and decay curves. And it's interesting when we can plot things out on a map, so to speak, and perhaps the powers that be want to plot consciousness on a map somehow by using many algorithmic formulas into what we like and what we choose as our mode of entertainment or what we value as life. Many people are waking up to the fact that we've perhaps been given a scroll, so to speak, or an inundation of education models through our school system to become a certain way. And humanity is probably going to be aware of this whole entire game that's been put before us. But if we can look at it as being, a challenge to really change our consciousness level, because perhaps we were hunter-gatherers long ago and we reincarnated each time to discover what we could do in this time to be all we could be as the angels that some of us, realize that they're walking in a bodysuit.
It's interesting you talk about these scripts, humanity's living out, because the main thing we need to do at this time is to start writing our own script. If you're a victim to everything that's going on, then you just live out the story of the powers that be and you end up suffering. But if you become a creator, you develop this ability to write your own script and create your own life how you want it in alignment to a higher vibration.
Yes, and it's seemingly once we are on that path to becoming, there is a gnosis from within that just allows the being to know automatically. Let's just say pictorially, you can see the sacred geometry in a vision. And you don't need to know the mathematics of it. You just know that it's perfect in itself. And you can see the relationship of what that particular visual is offering you in the form of a library of information. And the gnosis is innate. It's already within us. It's just tapping into our own particular source that connects to the universal and spiritual laws of creation out there.
Exactly. We're all plugged into this universal field of intelligence and knowing, and it's all there. All we have to do is just allow ourselves to see that. And for me, I found it's about looking inwards instead of looking outwards too much. Turn the vision back towards self and look within. Everything's there.
And I was wondering if, I had something to say about what you were saying. Geez, I lost my thought. I have to admit it. Sorry about that.
Well, it is a process, and so we constantly are jumping around here with our various ideas that are stimulating each other into what the next thought is. And it's a building process of how we're making a connection right now across the waters, across the whole grid of the planet. And it's also looking at, this is a communication device that we're operating through right now. But also, I feel a connection of a brotherhood out there of people like yourself, Free Spirit, that open up the dream world and are activating certain locations or addresses by which one could resonate to when they go into dream states. Because that's another aspect of humanity that is based upon circadian rhythms as well. And even the Egyptians, talk about the boat of Ra and, the upper world and the lower world. And a lot of that is sensory deprivation to sunlight. When we are receiving sunlight, the faster than light particles that pass through the sun, and we're talking stellar, through the sun, and the sun through either the moon sometimes and planet Earth, we are experiencing nighttime if you're on the dark side of the planet. But that's a specialized energy that's receiving a specific type of energy coming from the stellar and galactic centers. And often, we look at this as we are eclipsing the sun, and we're capable of receiving that particular energy. And at that time, when those on the other side of the planet are receiving the sunlight, their circadian rhythms are just slightly either ahead or behind, depending upon the rotation of our daily day here. All of this is information in the form of nutrition coming from stellar sources out there, galactic centers, faster than light particles, and one that I would term to be superluminal in essence of how we receive the higher energies is to kind of disconnect from the lower energies. And you've been saying that all along. It is about reprogramming the self.
Definitely reprogramming the self, letting go of old beliefs, old vibrations, and recreating in a new mode of being. And all the energies of the universe are there to help people. You know, there's star beings there, there's the angels there, and people can draw on these resources, on the love of these beings to empower their lives and make changes.
Yeah, it's how we perceive our environment. Like we were saying, we have to let the fear mode go because that would change our body. So if we're in the state of joy, I don't think we could be in the state of fear. I mean, that's one way to ignore it, I guess, if you don't know exactly how to clear. But I think that if we clear ourselves, like me and you, Free Spirit and CHelsia, we're by the ocean, and the ocean does help with that tremendously. And you can swim in the water, or any water as far as that goes. Even swimming pools at the fitness center helped me as well, and the steam rooms. And
geographical location is really important for people at this time. You know, if your body's in a real high energy, then yeah, you need to be by the sea, or you need to live in the mountains, forest, or maybe even a tropical island somewhere.
You know, that's exactly, the tropics gave me such a surge of just extreme energy all day.
And the reason why that is because in the tropics, the constellation of Sagittarius, where the central galactic sun is, it passes overhead, and you get more of a direct bombardment of intergalactic frequency. You know, if you're too far away from the equator, Sagittarius, it doesn't rise very high above the horizon, so you're not getting so much of that cosmic energy. Plus, you're getting less of the sun because, you know, you have a winter, you have the short days, and you have the cold and the damp, and it's no good for the body, really.
And the variety of medicinal plants that are in the rainforest are compared to none in any other environment. It's interesting that it does have probably the spores and the galactic resonance came through there, and maybe that was the firmament all around the earth.
Well, it's more like a Garden of Eden in these tropical places because the electron spins around the plants are so energetic, and the plant life is so lush, whereas you don't have that in a concrete jungle.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I was going to ask you, Free Spirit, when I lost my train of thought there earlier, was have you visited any sacred sites around the planet, or what we term sacred sites, where there's energy portals that are exchanging energy, like the breathing planet we walk on?
Yeah, I have done. I've lived in Sedona for 4 months last year, and I've also lived in Glastonbury in the UK for like 2 years. So they're the two main spots that I've been to. Oh, and Cairo, you know, the pyramids in Egypt, been there.
Wow, okay. Just CHelsia had an experience in Egypt as well with the pyramids there.
Well, you know, it's not really about me, but
I know.
It is about something
in.
that we had talked about earlier, and sensory deprivation chambers are all over initiatory sites in Egypt as to how to experience certain resonant fields of disconnecting to the mundane thought fields into a higher elevated state. But, you know, to wrap it up, since we don't have much time, I have one major clarification that I would love for you to elaborate on for the audience. And that question is, you know, keys to immortality is a very big word, and it's very much a buzzword. And we all know, once we're on this process and this journey, that the soul is immortal. And it sounds like to me that you are wanting to change the body physical to take the physical process into ascension, which means...
Exactly, that's what I'm looking to do, yeah.
That is the way of the Christos, or, you know, Christ, telling us that we can and we contain within ourselves the capability of doing that. And so not pertaining to any belief system out there, but knowing the body physical so well that we have the capability. This is such a dynamic time to be living in, and to recreate the gnosis within to allow this to be. So please elaborate on it for the remainder of the time here, and let our listening audience know what your process is.
Sure, yes. I'd say for people to let go of their conditionings and realize, that everyone can make it. Everyone has this ability to transmute the body. In the Christian religion, Jesus ascends, and some people have just been led to believe that ascension is just for the select few, but it's not like that. Every single human being can ascend the physical body if they make that choice and if they believe it is so. And many people are actually limited by beliefs, because if you believe immortality and ascension is impossible, then that's the reality that you're going to manifest for yourself. So it's about letting go of those limiting beliefs and believing it's actually possible. It's not possible to become something if you don't believe it can be so.
That's absolutely right. Your beliefs cause your experiences, and if we allow all possibilities to come into our environment that are going to assist us on our journey, then I think that's the place to start.
It's about openness, letting go, receiving, believing, trusting, everything.
Yes.
Surrendering to the magic, the love, the higher vibrations, and just allowing yourself to move into that zone without resistance. The resistance is just struggle, is pain, is karma. It's time to let all that go. It doesn't serve anymore.
Yes, we have to adjust ourselves all the time depending on where our balance points in our life are, and that's our choices that we make and where we're going to go next. We only have a few moments left here, Free Spirit, and CHelsia wanted to say a few words before we do our sum up.
Well, basically, I'm going to allow you to kind of just take us out of here, but the question is, all of us in humanity at this given time, it's been stated that there are 7 root races and 7 sub-root races to each root race, and we're in the 5th creating the 6th, and those that have chosen to be here at this time are here to